Hi, and welcome to K Nunn Productions, giving you the straight dope on dogs.
I'd like to start off by making a correction to a previous statement. In my last video, I said that only about 4 or 5% of blind people use service guide dogs, and I've seen people cite figures ranging from 2% or slightly less to 4 or 5. And recently, a nutter tried to tell me there are about 10,000 guide dogs in the United States. Given that there are an estimated 1 million blind people in the U.S., these numbers confirm that the vast majority of blind people don't want or use dogs. It also means that, assuming all of these dogs are being utilized, it's actually 1%. This reminds me of the time when some dog apologist tried to throw a study in my face, and that study confirmed what I was originally saying. In this case, they thought that telling me how many guide dogs there are would be compelling, but it simply made a much stronger case for my point. So today, we're going to look at some of the comments on a forum thread, which is titled, "A Blind Man's Thoughts on Guide Dogs and Dogs in General." I know this post is rather long and not separated into paragraphs, but don't worry, I will help condense it, and we will parse all of this together. But one thing that stood out to me was the following account. Dog nutters are constantly calling us ableist and falsely accusing us of having something against people with disabilities. But let's take a look at how dog nutters treat them. So, this is actually from that same post, the lengthy original comment on the thread.
Telling many dog owners to keep their dogs away from you because you cannot see them seems to only anger them further. I was 18, sat in my local park at about 9 o'clock in the evening listening to music. Normal teenage stuff, really. I had a man enter the children's playground where I was sitting and let his 2 barking dogs run around me. I called out to let him know they were not allowed in the playground and that I was afraid of them due to my blindness. He responded that I was a nonce and probably touched up kids because I was in the park. I was then told,
"My dogs have more right than you to be here, weirdo. You're a right freak."
It went on like that for a few minutes as I froze and didn't know what to do. This was a fully grown man with 2 large dogs screaming at me. I could hardly work out where he was. And yet, I was told by several people that in that situation, I was the problem. I don't know whether anyone will be interested in this, but I had to put it out there.
Then there is this part of the post.
Lastly, dogs in general are not safe or practical around blind people. I often have dogs try to go for my cane or decide they can growl at me for using it in public. Many times I've been screamed at by dog owners because I've walked into their mutt. It gets exhausting. The dog wants to assert its dominance by standing its ground in front of you, but I can't see that. So the thing ends up getting hit in the face by my cane. I don't mean to hurt it, but the owners have no awareness. Dog poo is another hazard. I don't know if you've ever tried cleaning it out of a cane rollerball. It's deeply unpleasant. There is no way for me to spot it either. I just get home and realize I have to clean my shoes and cane.
This is actually something I've pondered. Although, obviously, I have not had this experience myself, I've wondered just how practical it would even be to have to care for something as active, messy, high maintenance, and needy as a dog when you are blind or visually impaired. And think about it. You actually have to constantly keep training it rather than treating it like a pet dog. It doesn't seem very practical at all, and a dog is liable to make messes you can't even see. Just based on that alone, you probably wouldn't want that shit in your house at all. Then there are posts like these. This is from someone who says they love the guide dog they have, but who complains about how the ridiculous amount of dog hairs is a real problem. They say that, even despite regular grooming and vacuuming, you can feel the tumbleweeds of fur across the floor. They end by saying they would prefer a robotic guide dog or perhaps a pig, anything but a real dog. And here is a post from someone who acknowledges that there are things a guide dog cannot do, which should really be obvious to anyone. Another thing that's mentioned here, and this is something I've brought up myself several times before, is how people are trying to come up with even more services dogs can supposedly perform. Not only that, but there's also an acknowledgement of the fact that service dogs used to be much more rare and far more likely to actually be legitimate guide dogs. rather than pet dogs being passed off as service dogs, or perhaps one of these so-called service dogs which people get for assistance with some vague, undisclosed condition, or for something dogs aren't even proven to be able to assist with. And here's the bottom line. Even the best trained and most legitimate service dogs around have their flaws and limitations. Not everyone likes or wants dogs, regardless of whether they are disabled or not. There are a number of emerging and pre-existing technologies that can replace many, possibly all or most, of working dogs and so on. Their existence is certainly no argument in favor of dog ownership as it exists presently, where most of them are pets, and we end up having tons of feral and stray mutts to deal with as well, and everything else that comes along with the presence of dogs in society, which is fucking terrible. The blind and visually impaired often find these dogs impractical and unhelpful, or they acknowledge that any benefit is not going to be without drawbacks. And many of them have had awful experiences with other people's dogs in general.
Thanks again for tuning in to K-Nun Official. Stay dog-free, stay empowered, always speak the truth about dogs, and never say the dog's name. If you want to support this content and see more of it, like and subscribe. If you hate this content and want to fight for weird predator parasites,